And here we are again. Thank you for coming to our October Child Life Q&A. We had such an amazing Q&A last month with Katie Taylor. The engagement was so high, and we're like, how can we keep this going? And we know that just from community input and feedback, fostering peer relationships and building friendships and connection is a need and a pain point for a lot of families. Just like, how do I help my kid do this? And on that note, it's just important to remember that I think at any stage and age of life, building and maintaining friendships is really complex. I'm 34 and I have to chat GPT how to do it. So for many families in our community, this journey can even come with a more unique set of challenges, because there's so many different factors to take into place. There's different modes of communication. It's AAC Awareness Month, and we have an AAC streaming tomorrow. So that's a component. We have varying physical abilities and motor control limitations for some of our kiddos. There are sensory sensitivities. There's levels of emotional regulation. There are learning differences. There are so many things that when you really think about when it comes to building and maintaining a friendship, those do come into play, and they all influence how children, especially children with HIE, can connect with their peers. So understanding these dynamics, I think, is really crucial as we help navigate friendships in our community. And that's why, Anna, you're here. Thank you. To explore effective strategies for fostering these social connections among our children and their siblings, and just ensuring that every child has an opportunity to build really meaningful relationships. So that's what today's all about. So Annie, I know that we've done it before, but maybe introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do for Hope, what a Child Life Specialist is. You know the drill. We've done it many times now.
Yes. So glad to be here again. And just to recap again what a Child Life Specialist is. So I'm the virtual Child Life Specialist. I'm also a grief counselor for Hope for HIE. So I provide virtual support services, coping support for all of our Hope for HIE families. Typically that involves coping strategies, decreasing stress, anxiety, and pain related to medical procedures, because most of our kids have a lot of anxiety around medical procedures. So any kind of preparation and just helping the whole family deal with that. This is definitely, Child Life Specialists definitely focus on family-centered care. So siblings are another huge component that we focus on at Hope for HIE, and as a Child Life Specialist, we've developed some things to help our siblings too. So when I say that I'm here to provide support to our Hope for HIE families and help them cope with that, that includes our siblings, because while they're also being affected by all the stress and anxiety and the scary moments that happen with their siblings. So I'm always here for a phone call and email. And then we also do these awesome Q&As every month. People can always hop on and ask questions while we're here.
Yes. And so, really, we're just getting right into the nitty-gritty with this one, because that's what we're here for. When it comes to building, maintaining friendships, especially for children in our community, what are some strategies that we can equip them with?
Yeah. And I think this is good for all kids. Friendships are really important. Peer support is really important, especially as we get into those older teenage years, because as kids are getting older into their teenage years, they're relying more on peer support and peer friendships than their family and their parents. And that's normal. And that's the natural part of their developmental stage they're in. They still need their parents and their family around, but that's going to be their main source of support. But we want to support them from the time they're little all the way to their teenagers. So a few things you can do as we're helping to just kind of build those relationships throughout their life. I mean, obviously these vary a little bit and you'll adjust them according to the age, but I like to use a lot of just role-playing games so you can practice those social situations. So if you have a child that, they want to play with another sibling that's playing ball or doing a puzzle or whatever, role play that in your house. Be like, okay, I'll be the friend and I'm going to sit over here and play, and then have the child come up and give them words to practice that interaction. So you're practicing it so they're feeling more prepared, and it's going to reduce that anxiety because you're just doing it at home. And then you can give them some words to use. You can also I've been using this a ton lately just in my practice, is puppets. We've been making puppets. We've been having puppets talk. Then the kids do puppet shows. That's also just a great way for them to practice. And then, you know your kids, you know what they like, but sometimes, and even for my kids are polar opposites. One likes very small settings, one loves the big social, super social. So know that about your child. It does not have to be a huge social event. If they prefer that small social interaction, because large groups are overwhelming, foster that and, incorporate that. It's okay that we're just doing small group things. You want to gear their interaction towards the area that they're going to thrive in. If it's a small area or small amount of kids, fabulous. That's still, helping to foster that friendship. Mentoring programs, I love because it really helps kids just lead a certain activity and it builds their confidence. So let them focus on the area that they're strong in. It builds their confidence, and that's just going to help them as they grow and develop those relationships. And then highlighting those common experiences. So get them involved in things that they like that other kids like. So if they really like art, if they really like sports, if they like anime or certain characters, look up and find those things around you in your community or within their school and who has those common interests. Set up a play date, sign them up for a class, take them to, an area that might have, maybe there's like an anime conference. But that's going to kind of create that community for them. And so even just finding those common interests, whatever that is, they're going to know there's other kids out there that like the things that they do.
Yeah.
And making sure everyone can participate. So we need to make sure that if there are any adaptations that need to be made, obviously most of our parents know this, but setting them up for that success. So if there is any kind of an adaptation, making sure that that's there, even if it's some type of a sensory input that they need. I recently was at this event or at this relief effort up in the mountains, and we were all playing a game, and I had this one kiddo that just kept disrupting the game, and it was just, you could tell, like, interrupting the whole flow, and he was putting pieces in his mouth. So I'm like, I know he needs that sensory input. So I think he could put in his mouth, and just by giving him this bigger thing that he could chew on, he was able to participate in the game with the other kids, and it wasn't so disruptive. So just giving them that piece can help the whole interaction go better.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when it comes to, it takes a lot of people, right? It's not, for a lot of parents in our community, their kids spend a lot of time at home, but that's not the only place that they're at. A lot of them choose, not to do homeschooling. They go to school. There are other community events that they can engage with. So my question really is how can parents and caregivers work with other people, like educators and people in the community, to help encourage those social interactions, especially if they feel like, there's always an element of control as a parent too. Yeah. And how can we sit here and maybe delegate some of those responsibilities and rely on other people to help facilitate this effort?
Yes, definitely. Because we want to set our kids up for success, right? We want that we're taking them to these things so they can be successful and increase their self-esteem. So if there's a really big area of strength, I like to make sure the coach knows, make sure the adult leader knows, whoever, hey, they're really good at this. Can they maybe be in charge of this? That's just going to highlight them in the things that they're really good at and their strong areas. So that's only going to help. I like also doing like group building projects or teamwork projects instead of let's make this everything individual and competitive. Then we're creating that teamwork approach, and everybody again is looking for, everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses, and let's build upon all those strengths. So that's gonna help. Peer buddy programs I love. So if a school or an organization has a peer buddy program, you're gonna help by finding those, and I feel like getting the kids together, you're finding those common interests again. Hey, I didn't know you like this. Now you're meeting a new friend who has the same interest in you, and hence maybe, finding a new friendship or creating a new friendship.
Yeah. You said it yourself too. When there's a child with a disability in a family, that impacts the whole family dynamic, and especially a sibling too. So realistically, it really can influence their ability to make friendships, to maintain them. And so what are some strategies that you can give to families if they see that the sibling of the child with HIE is struggling to build those connections, how can we help them?
Yes, I think first and foremost, like acknowledging and making sure that they understand what the diagnosis is or what the disability is, because there's actually a lot of siblings who don't know. I've talked with parents and they're like, and I'm like, well, do they know what the diagnosis is? And they're like, I just assume they do because it's always been around, but I don't know. So I think having that initial conversation of what is it, because that way when they are in those situations where friends or peers are asking like, hey, what's going on, or why is this happening, they have the information and they can answer the question, or they cannot answer the question. That's the conversation you can have with them too. Like, hey, if you don't want to talk about this, you can say this instead, but still practicing. It kind of goes into that role playing again. Role play that conversation. If somebody asks you this question, this is what you could say, or give them options. So role playing that for them, because that is important.
Yeah.
And it just helps with building that communication. It's always an open line of communication that we want to keep open. Yeah. And I think along those same lines, we want to make sure that as a parent, we're spending that one-on-one time with the sibling, just to increase that bonding that is going to just continue to build that line of communication. And making sure that they're allowed to be in and participate in activities that they love, that they enjoy, that they choose to be a part of. And I think I've talked about this before, and I know other families have said this before as something that they do, but even if it means maybe that your HIE child or sibling has to miss a therapy that they're regularly in, so that the sibling can participate in a game or a specific school activity that they really want. Maybe that happens every once in a while, but just so they have their options too, so that they know what they want to do is important and validated, and they get that time. I also wanted to just mention, as far as like those activities, how important they are, because it allows them that time for that emotional release. So going to those activities when it's outside of the family, where maybe there is a lot of stress happening or scary things happening, being outside of that in a normalized environment of playing a game or doing your art class or whatever, that can just be that emotional release that kids really need. And then of course, and I think this kind of gets into maybe something we'll talk about too, is local support groups. Like Sib Shops is a very well-known one. There's not enough of them. I always hear there's nothing near me, but there might be something near you. So look up Sib Shops. And if they are near you, I would definitely recommend, just to help kind of support your sibling. And so they're not alone and they can meet other kids and make those connections.
And you're right. That kind of is the perfect segue, because we always talk about the importance of peer programming and support. So, we've talked about SOAR a lot. Which is our program for children with HIE, to find and build peer connections, and advocacy and resilience and ownership. And
you get them all.
I was like, it's out of order, but it's there. And also, of course, our Super Sibs. And we've even had, the last Q&A we did was even about like why sibling support programming is important. So to ask you to review and recap all that, we're not going to, because we can really just link in our blog and our takeaways to those things where we have so much designated time spent to it. But if you could just maybe give us the highlight reel, if you will, of what role can peer support programming play in building or strengthening social connections?
I think the most important thing that it does, it just decreases those feelings of isolation. I had a kid recently who was like, you mean there's other kids in North Carolina who have a sibling with autism? Like, yeah, there are. Like, had no idea there was other kids around him who had a sibling like him. So just decreases those feelings of isolation, a feeling of belonging, somebody else who just gets it, that you can talk to and you don't have to explain things. And for kids that, just fitting in is really important for kids, and they can do that when they have those peer support groups.
Yeah. And like I said, if you're looking for one and you need more recommendations on one, we're going to link all these out to our previous Q&As where we have all those resources. But again, as we always do, let's end with some, maybe that you could start with today.
Sure.
What other helpful resources would you recommend for parents to look out to if they're trying to help their children kind of form these peer connections and relationships with others?
Yeah, I've always talked about, and I talk about this all the time, are books, because I love using books, but it really is that simple language. It provides the opportunity to have the conversation without actually having the conversation. And it usually opens doors to discussions, and it gives kids ideas of, again, just a sense of belonging that they can have. So I do want to attach I have videos and stuff too, but some of the things that I really like are, there's some simple videos on, I think it's like there's a Fancy Nancy video that is fabulous, that talks, it's like her sibling, one of the kids' siblings with autism, and explaining it to her friends. So it kind of does it in, again, that just kind of fun, non-friendly, like appropriate way for children, as well as there's, I think, a Daniel Tiger one, PBS Kids. And then I also am going to link a YouTube video. It's a little bit for older kids, but it is just kids. It's kids with disabilities and their siblings talking what their life is like living together. And I think that helps with knowing there's other kids out there like you. And then that can bring that, foster that peer support, peer relationship. So you know that there's other kids out there. And I think it just gives them more confidence that, in listening to other kids and talking to other kids. And then of course, sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just, of course, I always interrupt. It's like my thing. I'm so sorry. But it just made me think of, like, even for a parent to watch that, because especially if their kid is older, like you said, they don't always go to the parent, they go to the peer. And so even having an insight into the inner workings of what those thoughts can look and sound like could be helpful, and even give them like a foundation point, or even like prompts to be like, you know what, I was watching this video and this kid said this. Is that something that you've experienced? I feel like that would equip them with like a starting point. That was all I was going to say.
No, and you're absolutely right. And I've given that information to parents, like, hey, this might give you an idea of something, exactly what you said, what you want to say. And it might also just give kids the idea of like, oh, okay, I can talk to my friend about this, or I don't have to talk to my friend about this.
Totally.
And just kind of, again, encourage that peer relationship and support. The last thing, of course, I wanted to share that we've talked about many times and we have links to is the Support Spot app from Child Life on Call. There's specific areas on there for sibling support, for non-medical resources. So it might not even be that, obviously this is like really a non-medical thing that we're talking about. We're talking about friendships that these kids need. So if you go on the app and go under resources, non-medical topics, and I think learning differences, it has a list of books, it has podcasts, it has video recommendations. So I didn't want to put it all on here and like regurgitate it. So it is all on that app, and it's really helpful.
Awesome. And as always, I mean, this was a quick one, but I love it. It's like digestible information for people. Thank you once again for joining us. And we're going to start looking into topics for November. November is Epilepsy Awareness Month. So we're going to try to bring in some of the expertise that you as a child life specialist can provide for families kind of related to that topic. But until then, thank you everyone for joining. You can find this on our YouTube channel shortly. And you will be able to find our key takeaway blog and downloadable resource on our website shortly thereafter that. So we appreciate you coming. And as always, you can reach out to Annie at hie.support and ask for any help about this topic or more that you encounter. So thanks again.
Thank you.